going to use 5 steps when we add and subtract decimals. The first step we have is we want to estimate our sum or difference. So if I look at this first problem, I'm going to think, okay, 16 and 1800ths, that's really close to 16. And then I'm going to look at my second number here, and I think this is actually really close to 1 1/2. Okay, if I think about this without this part of the number on, 1 4/10 is very close to 1 5/10, which is 1 1/2. So I'm going to estimate that my answer is going to be close to 16 plus 1 1/2, which is 17 1/2. Okay, now it's time to do my problem. Step number 2 is that we need to rewrite these numbers to make our problem, and we want to line up our decimal points. The way I always do this is I imagine a line. Okay, so imagine this is an imaginary line here. That line is where my decimal points go. So when I take this first number, 16 and 1800ths, I'm going to write it with the decimal point on that imaginary line. And I'm going to do the same thing for my second number. I'm going to take this number and write it with my decimal point on this imaginary line. Oops, that should be a 1. 4, 5, 7. Now what this does for me is it lines up my place value positions. My ones columns are together, my tenths, my hundredths, and my thousandths. So this imaginary line, when I line up my decimal, helps me keep all my place value positions in order. Step number 3 is that any empty places I have, I need to fill with zeros. Okay? So there are no thousandths in this top number, so I'm going to put a 0 because there are no thousandths. And that 0 is going to help me when it comes to adding and subtracting, which is my 4th step. I'm going to add 0 plus 7 is 7, 8 plus 5 is 13, and then I have 4 plus 1 plus 1 is 6, I have 6 plus 1 is 7, and then my 1 here. Now my final last step is to make sure you put your decimal in your answer directly where it was in the problem. Again, right on that imaginary line. So our answer was 17 and 637 thousandths, which is very close to our estimate of 17 1/2. Now these 5 steps work for adding and subtracting. But this time when we estimate, we're going to do it a little bit differently because these numbers are a little bit bigger. So I want to look at this first number and make things easy. Remember, the whole idea of an estimate is to give you a problem that's easy to solve in your head. So I'm going to take 183 and 6/10, and I'm going to estimate that's close to 180. And then I'm going to take 37 and 9800ths and say, well, that is actually really close to 40. So if I do 180 and I take away 40, that means my answer is going to be close to 140. So step 1, my estimate is finished. Step 2, I now need to line up my decimal points. So again, imagine this line, imaginary line. I'm going to put my decimal point right on it, and I'm going to write my first number. And when I write my first number, I have 6/10, and then I'm going to put all these other numbers where they go in relation to that decimal point. Take the same thing for my second number, put in my decimal point. I have 37 on the left side. I have 98 on the right side. This is a subtraction problem. So now step 3 is I'm going to add zeros if needed. I don't have any hundredths in this top number, so I'm going to add the 0. And now it's time to subtract. I can't do 0 minus 8, so I'm going to have to regroup. So 10 take away 8 is 2. I can't do 5 take away 9, so I'm going to have to do 15 take away 9 once I regroup that, and I get 6. Can't do 2 take away 7, so again, let's regroup. 12 take away 7 is 5, 7 take away 3 is 4, and my 1. And my very last step of all is to put in my decimal. And you can see our estimate was 140, and we ended up with 145 and 62 hundredths. Pretty close. All right, last problem. If I'm going to estimate, 5 is going to stay a 5. My 2 and 73 hundredths, that's pretty close to 3. So I'm going to subtract these, and I'm going to go 5, take away 3. It's going to give me an answer that's close to 2. So now it's time to line everything up. I want to put in this imaginary line. Now here's a problem we haven't had before. This does not have a decimal point with it. Remember, every whole number has a decimal at the end of it. So this first number is like having a 5 with a decimal point after it. Okay? You can think of it like money. If this was $5, it would have a decimal point and it would have 2 zeros over here. So you can see that that's where the decimal would go. I'm getting a little ahead of myself though, so let's just start with my 5 lined up. Then I'm going to take my second number, put my decimal point in place, write my digits. It's a subtraction problem. And now it's time for my placeholders. I need to put some zeros here so that I can do my subtraction. Now, 0 take away 3, can't do it. Need to come all the way over to the 5. So this becomes a 10. Now I have something I can regroup here. So 10 take away 3 is going to be 7. 9 take away 7 is going to be 2. 4 take away 2 is going to be 2. And my very last step of all is to put my decimal point in place. We said our answer was going to be close to 2, and it's actually 2 and 27 hundredths, so we're close. Good job.